Every day, we produce at least 2.5 quintillion bytes worth of data. That's 17 zeros. And every minute, we send 16 million text messages, 156 million emails, and $51,892 worth of transactions through Venmo. This is the 21st century. Our vessels of commerce and communication move ever so steadily towards online exclusivity, and limited legislation exists to keep these vessels safe. Whoa! But it just isn't enough.
In 2020, two massive cyber attacks from China and Russia on US targets revealed gaping holes in the nation's firewalls. These cyber attacks were executed by hacking servers that were run by domestic providers such as Amazon. They went virtually undetected by the FBI and Department of Homeland Security since they were launched from within the US, which generates a pressing issue as to whether or not the United States cybersecurity protections will be sufficient against rapidly advancing cyber threats and attacks.
Part of the thing here is that we are going after these targets. We've got to get more aggressive. It's a lot of criminal sort of hacker gangs, but a lot of times these criminal hacker gangs in places like Russia and increasingly in China are operating either with the knowledge of, with the assent of, or at the request of the government.
This is Jamil Jaffer. Jaffer currently serves as founder and executive director of the National Security Institute and as the director of both the national security and cybersecurity programs at George Mason University. After hearing him speak on C-SPAN, we decided to give him a call.
One day something's going to really happen that's troubling and problematic. We've heard about potential attacks on water supplies. In an ideal world, we get ahead of that threat, but we spend too much time thinking about, how can we regulate this? How can we use the government stick instead of using the government carrot?
Currently, the U.S. employs three primary pieces of legislation in order to regulate cybersecurity. These laws are the 1996 Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, the 1999 Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, and the 2002 Homeland Security Act, which includes the Federal Information Security Management Act.
NIST wants to ensure that, first off, the federal government uses appropriate cryptography and cybersecurity practices to protect the information that we have in our communications inside the federal government. But we know that our reach goes beyond that. We want to ensure that other industry organizations, companies, people also have access to safe and secure cryptography and are using good cybersecurity practices.
However, these regulations do not address computer-related industries, such as internet service providers and software companies.
As a whole, the issue with current U.S. cybersecurity legislation is that it's similar to patching a pair of ripped jeans over and over again. Not only do the pants become less effective at serving their practical purpose, but this patch-as-we-go method is slow and only manages to address cybercrime once it's already said and done. So, why haven't we fixed anything better? One of the ultimate pitfalls regarding the implementation of better cybersecurity is the age-old debate of security versus liberty. Essentially, citizens are required to surrender certain civil liberties in order to preserve security, and vice versa. Despite arguments for strong encryption, not everyone is so enthusiastic. In fact, from a legislative standpoint, 2020 was one of cybersecurity's roughest years. Conservative Senators Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn, and Tom Cotton sponsored the Lawful Access to Encrypted Data Act, which, according to the Washington Post, would require tech companies to weaken access to their secure systems so that law enforcement can track cybercriminals. These legislators doubt the effectiveness of strong encryption, arguing that it makes it harder for the government to catch cybercriminals. The act did not pass. However, it represents a very real resistance to certain cybersecurity measures.
A lot of people think there's a trade-off between liberty on one side and better cybersecurity on the other. And I think the reality actually is that in a lot of ways, strong cybersecurity can actually preserve individual liberty.
Cyber attacks between us and outside nations are already occurring, and we're woefully unprepared. But these conflicts aren't the only conflicts we have to worry about. We also need to worry about the increasingly tense war for information.
In order to learn more about federal policy regarding the quantum realm, we reached out to Dr. Dustin Moody, a mathematician at NIST.
Now, the project I'm involved in is called the Post-Quantum Cryptography Project. And the idea behind that is that various scientists and researchers in many fields have been working on what's called a quantum computer, which would have a lot of very positive applications in science and in our lives.
The threat is the cryptography that we use today gets catastrophically broken. Well, then you start working backwards, all the things you have to do to upgrade the internet. The fact is, there are many adversaries out there in the world, and the security of all of our internet communications and the security of, say, government systems and the way in which e-commerce runs all depends upon that. Well, if all of a sudden there's no security in those algorithms, well, what do we do?
That was Dr. Brian LaMacchia, the head of Microsoft Research's Security and Cryptography team. We contacted him in order to understand the private sector side of the story.
If we don't get this public-private partnership right between industry on one side, government on the other, we're not going to be able to keep up with the broad range and scale of attacks that aren't just nation states. They're criminal groups too, they're individual hackers, but oftentimes there's a lot of back and forth between the groups.
To conclude our research, we communicated with Dr. David Mussington, the Executive Assistant Director for Infrastructure Security at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and he provided us with valuable insight. The threat landscape is only going to continue to evolve and become more complex. So whatever the threat of tomorrow is, we must begin preparing today, and we must do it together across sectors.
There are a few different things that we'd like to see in new cybersecurity legislation. That government agencies are required to participate in cybersecurity training and testing. The creation of task forces or other commissions in order to ensure better preparation. The assurance that cybersecurity solutions support mobile devices. The avoidance of sticking to only one type of technology or solution. And above all, the assurance that privacy matters.